Morning, everyone. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Planning and Strategy Committee. Here, one item. We have in the room Matt, myself, Melissa, and Gavin. Online, the other two committee members, Quentin and Barry, approval to be there. We've got a quorum in the room, so everyone has voting rights. So we have no apologies. Any declarations of conflict of interest on this one? No.
I suppose just to clear, I was on the hearing for the Wakatipu Basin. I don't believe it's conflict, but just to declare that.
Sorry, Quinn, you're on the hearing.
I was on the commissioner for the Wakatipu Basin, of which they were both a submitter and obviously a subsequent appellant. So.
Yeah, I think that's historical. I don't think there's real conflict there. Thanks. So we'll accept no conflict, okay, Quinn? Confirmation of agenda. We've got one agenda item. So we'll move the agenda be confirmed without amendment. Melissa, second, Gavin. Okay, all in favour?
Aye.
Right, thank you. Right. The item is the Hills private plan change request, and we've got Alison, Sean, and Craig. Right, who's talking?
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for your indulgence in letting us have this extraordinary meeting so we could meet our timeframes. It's very much appreciated. I'm going to hand over to Sean and Craig, who will take you through the private plan change and the decision that you'll be making today. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Sean Widdowson. I work for the Queenstown Lakes District Council policy team, and Craig Barr has been working on this plan change request as well as Bridget Gilbert, who was the procured landscape expert. Today, I will be going through the plan change request we have received, as well as providing the recommended option to be taken as well.
Okay.
To quickly summarise, this will go over the background of the zone in question, as well as providing a summary of what has been requested in the plan change, the options which are available for a private plan change request, key issues raised in this, and I'll go further into this as well when they arise, the options before the council and recommendation, and then the conclusion and any questions. I'm able to take questions if something is unclear, but longer discussions will plan to be at the end. That is appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
To provide detail, the zone in question is in the proposed district plan. It's in the resort zone section of the plan. The zone has been progressively developed between the years 2000 and 2007. It was ranked as a marquee golf course. The provisions, in the sense the purpose of the zone, as well as its rules and objectives, relate to providing the resort and the associated with the golf course within the zone. The zone was sought by submission when the proposed district plan was identified, and while not initially approved, appeals were resolved and a consent order was issued on the zone in September 2021. The provisions of the zone also enabled the development of complementary resort facilities. These included a golf driving range, provisions for visitor accommodation, as well as for home sites as well. The private plan change request was made by the resort owner, who are the Hills Resort Limited, which that is blocked by that. Their acronym is THRL, which is referred to later when they are referenced in the presentation. The request was made to amend the locations and extents of activity areas in the structure plan of the zone, and I'll be showing these proposed changes on the structure plan later as well. And also proposed changes to the chapter 47, as well as consequential changes to the earthworks and subdivision and development chapter. These changes to the district-wide chapters were to references to activity areas which were removed or added in this proposal. The private plan change raised issues regarding planning, landscape, transport and access and servicing. In regards to issues, this was for the amount of information that was provided in the application. Council then requested further information to clarify these, which will be discussed when these different sections are looked at later in the report as well. The primary things which were considered when the private plan change was put into council were that no additional houses were proposed, but the key considerations were the new location of the home sites within the structure plan, as well as the removal of an existing 9-hole golf course, which is referred to as the farm course within the application. So this raised questions on the location of where these were located within the zone, but the extent of housing had not changed through the proposal. For the zone's location, it is located just to the south of Arrowtown, and it is located to the east of Millbrook Resort Zone as well. This is the overlaid structure plans. So to explain the changes, the red markings are what is being proposed, and the gray and black indicate the existing activity areas within the zone. The left-hand side of the diagram is the south portion of it. So the structure plan is outlined to the north, pointing to the right. So off Hogan's Gully Road, you can see the more dense thatching red indicates the structural planting areas, and the thinner thatching represents the landscape amenity management areas. And these are then in location to home sites which are being proposed in this application as well. This diagram explains what the private plan change process is. I'll summarize it. An application was made to have a private plan change request was made by the applicant. In this case, it was Resort Limited. This would then allow council to request further information on the application. One of the aspects is this consideration is if we have enough information to understand the proposed effects of the application, as opposed to establishing the merits of what is being proposed. Council received the plan change request in November 2024. We then obliged with our statutory requirements and requested further information in December of 2024. The response to this request of further information was then provided to us on the 15th of May, which then led to us having a 30 working day period for council to make a decision under clause 25 of the Act. The options available to a local authority, in this case, the Queensland Lakes District Council and the committee, are to reject the plan change request. The reasons for which a local authority may reject a plan change request are detailed within this section. These are the only reasons it can be rejected. Another option available in the Act is to convert the plan change request to a resource consent application where this is suited. These will also be further explained more. So this is just to summarize, the plan change request can be accepted. This means it will proceed as a private plan change request, and the requester of the plan change will remain as the applicant, the Hills Resort Limited, or the plan change may be adopted. So this would mean that the council would take on the request and it will become a public plan change in similarity to other changes which have been made to the district plan. The decisions are then able to be appealed by the applicant, depending on what is decided. The council will then notify the request, and the Act also establishes how this needs to be done. It will then proceed to go through a hearing process, which will open up a democratic process where people are able to submit either in support or in opposition of what is being requested. So the purpose of today is to establish that we have received the information required to so that we can understand what is being proposed, and that a member of the public or an affected party would be able to understand what is being proposed. Regarding the options available for rejection, there are 5. 3 of them here don't need as much explanation, so I'll quickly go through them. The request was not frivolous or vexatious, so A was not applicable. The request was made following sound resource management practices. Best practice was followed for it, and the request was not inconsistent with Part 5 of the Act, which is the Act's purpose. Regarding this application, more consideration was given to points B and E. Regarding point B, it establishes that within the last 2 years, if the substance of the request has been considered and given effect to by local authority or environment court, this would be a basis for rejection. The last time this occurred was in that consent order in September 2021, which was above that 2-year period. Regarding point E, in the case that the proposed change is made to a zone, provisions which have been operative for less than 2 years. Regarding the status of the provisions of the zone, they have been treated as operative in line with how the Act establishes that for over 2 years from that consent order. So this would also be not a reason to be able to reject the plan change request. Regarding the remaining options, I'll quickly go through them and then end on the recommended option, which is accept the plan change. I'll end on that. Regarding treating the request as a resource consent, this is only available if the nature of the request would lend itself for this to be done. Aspects of the request cannot be undertaken as a resource consent, and other aspects of it would be able to be undertaken, but through various and multiple non-complying resource consent applications. And for efficiency, it was seen that it'd be better suited to be undertaken as a private plan change request. In adopting the plan change, this would mean that the council would become the requester of it. The costs for the hearing and the undertaking of the plan change request would then be borne on council. This was not deemed as a suitable option, as the requested changes primarily benefit the requester, and there is no wider community benefit for it. Regarding accepting the plan change, this would mean it would be processed following Part 2 of the Act's first schedule. It would be the requester the applicant would be the requester. The costs would remain with the applicant. And is also an important aspect to this as well, that the adoption of a plan change would likely indicate the approval of what is being proposed, where the acceptance of the plan change does not. The acceptance of the plan change follows in that we accept that that the information has been received and the submitter would be able to understand what is being proposed, but council would still have the ability to submit at a later date if it wanted to during the hearing process. For the landscape effects, so these were issues that were raised in the request for further information. Regarding issues, it was not deemed that enough information had been provided to fully understand what was being proposed from the plan change request. Regarding these, a context graphic was requested to better understand. This was not provided, but it was deemed that this was acceptable, that it was not needed under the clause to understand the application. But this information could still be requested during a hearing process, and it has been raised that a submitter would be able to understand that this is something that could be provided at a later stage, as the private plan change request is a public document. The council also sought clarification on some of the other aspects of the proposed change in the landscape graphics and further information provided in the application. The council also requested updates on the photo montages that were provided, as well as the structural planting area. So to clarify frameworks, that is meant to say areas as is shown in the structure plan. This information was provided and it was reached that we had enough information so that we could accept what was being proposed, but it was not approved, that we understand what is being proposed in the application, and further information or relief could be sought during a hearing if that was wanted or required. Questions were also brought up regarding the provisions regarding site access as well as servicing. Regarding this, information was requested about the site access point of Hogan's Gully Road. Information was then provided to the council in the response to the request for further information. Council also requested more information regarding the impact on requiring the servicing of the zone, and the response to this was that the expectations regarding servicing would not change through the request. This information was then also seen as enough that we could accept that we had provided information, and a submitter would be able to understand what the effects of it would be. In this, there were also questions raised regarding changes to the proposed district plan provisions, as well as aspects of the Section 32 report, which was provided to council. One of these was that 5 non-complying rules were proposed to be removed. This was deemed as accepted, as in the response for further information, it was provided that the status of activities not listed within the chapter default to being non-complying, and this was being proposed as to have more efficiency in the consenting process. And this was deemed as we would be able to understand what was being proposed. Further information was also provided on the design guidelines, and a submitter would be able to understand that how the applicant was proposing to address these issues, or not issues, but address these aspects of the resource consent of the recent public plan change request. The RFI, the request for further information, also raised the impact of removing the farm golf course, which is the nine-hole golf course I mentioned in the southern portion, and if this would weaken the focus of it being a resort and on-site visitor activities. This was responded to as well, and it detailed that this would not have an effect on this. This is something that, again, we have had information and it is now available for a submitter to submit on if they so wanted. And it was accepted that this information was provided in the plan change request and further information provided by the applicant. For the options analysis, we would determine if sufficient information to proceed to accept, adopt, or reject the decision was available within the plan change request and the information that had been provided by the applicant, and to understand if sufficient information had been provided to enable persons to make an informed decision on the request, either in support or opposition, had been provided along with the application. Noting that council would be able to submit, depending on its view, in support or in opposition at a later stage as well. For the recommendation to the committee making the decision under the Act, it would be to accept the plan change request for notification in full, and then subsequently determine if it wanted to submit on the application during a hearing. If the council were to accept, it would then have to separately consider if it wanted to submit on the application. And there are other reasons that this could be to provide the hearings panel discretion to make modifications as well. The decision to accept or reject an independent hearing panel's recommendation on the changes subsequently from a hearing would remain with the council. That is not what is being accepted on this instance. If the application is accepted, it would also be it would then be notified, and the timeframe for notification would be looking at early July. . that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to.
Okay, thanks for that. Like I say, we've all obviously read the item 2 and seen more of the detail. Just a couple of quick questions for me before I open it up. What sort of timeline are we looking at for a plan change, private plan change like this? You say it'll be notified in July. What sort of time frame are we looking at? How long does it normally take?
The submission period is 20 days, into preparation of reports, so you'd be looking at a hearing in sort of late September, early October. Perhaps a bit earlier, you think?
But no,
Yeah,
that's
we've
that's
got
one.
plenty of time. Yeah, we could be having a hearing this year. Yep.
This year, even
Yeah.
after, feels a bit optimistic.
And through the chair, if I could,
Yeah.
a 2-year period from the application coming in to being completed, we generally meet that period. So certainly within 2 years, generally less time than that, probably within 12 months period.
The talk about the map you showed up there, the structural planning areas. Is that a new thing, or is it just a change? It seemed all that you showed the picture with the dark red.
Yeah, the hatching.
Hatching.
Thing.
So is that the structural planning areas? Are they new concept, or is it something that was already has already been approved and you're moving them, or what?
They already exist on the structure plan as it relates to the existing location of the development areas or the home sites or where development's proposed. And the sort of in this case, they're being proposed in new locations. The primary purpose is to help mitigate and the visual effects of the new home site locations.
Okay.
And help them get into the landscape, and they have a secondary function of Indigenous vegetation management. Viewing the zone from sort of the Hogan's Gully Road where that new development's proposed, it's quite a lot of sort of remnant grey shrubland, Indigenous vegetation on that hillside. So they're proposing to sort of plant that out and make that planting sort of more comprehensive, so it gets in.
So for some of the existing home sites and activities, so none of them have actually been built on or done yet, is that correct?
That's correct. Some of the home sites on the structure plan already have houses in them, which are
Yeah.
existing residences, but for the most part, the home sites that were approved in the existing structure plan haven't been developed.
And you mentioned something about consider, where we consider, if it's accepted, that we consider resubmission. Does that come through a subsequent process with the committee, or is it, how does that work?
Through the chair, that would be a subsequent process. Previously, council has assessed that through like an agenda item to full council making a corporate submission on a private plan change. And it would be important that we kept both the regulatory and that corporate function quite different in terms of how we do our roles. But yeah, it can be done if the council decided that they did want to submit as to the particulars of this private plan change, definitely.
Matt, Matt, then Quentin.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, the difference between accept and adopt. With accept, is this the only mechanism where public notification and submissions and an eventual hearing takes place, or would it happen under any other option other than one?
Accept and adopt would both have that
Other
same process. It's just that adopting it would mean that it would be a council process, like we'd taken on that private plan change as our own, so it would have legal effect at a different time than a private plan change. But both go through a first schedule process and both have the ability for people to make submissions and be heard at a hearing.
Okay, thank you for that.
Quentin and then Melissa.
Yeah, thank you. I understand that the hills have been added as Schedule 2 under the fast track consent bill. Can you confirm whether you've had any engagement with any of their parties on what that would look like for here?
Yeah, through the chair, I can confirm I've met the parties and they have not progressed any consultation in relation to any fast track application. All they've noted for us was that that was something they wanted to put in at the time in case they, in terms of project planning, whether they want to go for fast track or plan change, they prefer the plan change route, provides more flexibility, goes through the process. So they haven't consulted with us regarding fast track.
So is there any indication whether they would be seeking more than the plan change, the private plan change is seeking through the consent, or is it just a different avenue? Would they be seeking the same consent through the fast track, or would they be seeking something more?
Through the chair, it was the same activity. They, at the time, they thought it was an opportunity to perhaps put in the fast track proposal, but it was for a similar activity. Their preferred route is the plan change route.
But I think
from the informal discussions that I've had,
the description in the schedule, I think, referred to an additional golf course, didn't it? Which this is the opposite to this. This is removing one of the golf courses. I
can't recall precisely, just straight through the chair.
Okay, all right.
Can't recall precisely, but that was what they indicated to be when we met.
Okay, and can you also confirm what are the status of the Boxer Hill appeal and any other, the adjoining appeals, like the ones on McDonnell Road and stuff?
Through the chair, the appeals along McDonnell Road have been resolved, so there's no outstanding appeals there. The Boxer Hill is still open, and we would potentially be looking to bring back an agenda item on that one at some stage in the future. That had been on hold awaiting the outcome of the Airburn appeals to the plan. So that is a work in progress, and we're ensuring that the planners working on that are aware of both the Hills private plan change and our timing and what we need to do in respect of that, and how the environment could change through that process as it relates to the Boxer Hill outstanding appeal. How
many building sites is currently under their appeal state a proposal?
I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, Councillor Smith, but I can get back to you on that one.
Okay. So I just wanted to touch on, so the applicant, and it's in your report, but it's the applicant's advantages and disadvantages on page 10 of your report. So I just wanted to run through those very quickly. It says it will avoid multiple processes required for non-complying activity resource consent. Would this plan change prevent non-complying activity resource consents from being applied for?
I don't think it would.
The answer is no, I think, but I was just...
The answer is no. This,
okay.
I mean, yeah.
All right. So I just want to, and I'll just run through these quickly, but it enables integrated planning for the entire zone on a comprehensive basis. Given that we're on the third or fourth iteration of what was integratedly designed, can you be, and that they could apply for additional development under the fast track consent, how can you be confident that this provides a comprehensive integrated planning for the entire zone?
Well, the alternative or the status quo, if they apply for resource consents for what they seek under the existing structure plan, they would be non-compliant.
Would they have argued that they had comprehensively designed it at the time of the previous appeal?
I'm through the chair. I'm not sure if this is what you're meaning, but as far as I'm aware, the Hills are wanting to change the configuration of the golf holes to make this a more premier course. So as a result of that, they need to change activity areas and the like. So undertaking a private plan change and looking at all of those areas in an integrated manner, I think that's what they're saying as part of the application, as opposed to a site by site resource consents, which, because they wouldn't be in keeping with the structure plan as in the district plan now, would be non-compliant consents.
Those, yes, and just.
But I suppose my point is that that they always say this, that it's comprehensive design. This is it, you know, it allows for the offset, better design, whatever. But they've already done that. It's already been designed. In fact, the first design, they made a very strong case that this wasn't going to be another Millbrook and wasn't going to have heaps of housing. It was just going to be a few houses scattered amongst a very elite golf course. Now, they're not just redesigning that golf course, they're actually increasing the amount of development. I think you're saying by 14 sites or something, which, you know, I don't know what the number is, but it's many millions of dollars each. It's not a design driven process. It's a development driven process. So it's anyway, I just wanted to
What's the
question? Yeah, I do. And the question is that they've listed 5 benefits on page 10 there. Are any of them really, given that E, and I'll just point out that E hasn't actually been assessed because it hasn't been subject to submissions and things like that. That's their assessment of this. Are any of those actually benefits of this plan change? In your opinion?
I think that's just to note the preamble to that paragraph is that's the applicant's perspective on justification.
Yeah.
For change. And one of the reasons I guess council officers are recommending that it's accepted as a private plan change and not adopted as a council variation or plan changes, so the merits of those can be tested.
Okay, so what are the benefits from the council's perspective of this plan change?
There may not be many, but it's a private plan change request. So the key issue is to consider, is it appropriate to accept it as a private plan?
No, and I understand that, but it's fair to say that those advantages that they've listed in number 10 could be grossly overstated, and yet to be assessed.
Okay.
Yeah, point taken.
But the other advantage of it to a council is it avoids a whole lot of the resource.
So yes, well, but that doesn't remove that. It doesn't. They've always entitled to do non-complying resource consents, and they've proven time and time again that they will continue to do that. You know, will continue to push for additional development. So anyway, it's not a benefit. It's not a benefit. It doesn't change anything by. Well, it's a fact because it's a fact. Anyway, I was just pointing these things out because it is frustrating that these get you know, argued that they're comprehensive and get changed and, you know, and added to and added to and added to. What I would say is that, you know, there's still an incredible amount of unrealized development in that area, and the true impact of even the consented development within the hills is very uncertain, and obviously the adjoining Hogan's Gully, and the uncertainty, I think, and I accept the answer is that indication is it might not be different to this, but the reality is it could be the fast track consent could actually be in an enormous amount more than this, and I think that creates an enormous uncertainty for us in terms of how do we assess something that we think is comprehensive and complete when, you know, it clearly might not be. Look,
just to the chair, in terms of answering that question, that's similar to any process we undertake. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what consents are going to be lodged. We have a situation right now where a private plan change has been lodged with us, and the decision before the committee is to accept, adopt, reject, or
Yeah,
follow
yeah, I
the resource
understand that,
consent route.
yeah.
And I think that I understand where you're coming from, because fast track will put us in a position where we really don't know, just like the resource consent process, but obviously fast track is more out of our control. I think we do need to understand what's the proposal in front of us on the table and make a decision
Okay.
on the basis of that.
Okay, and what's the final number of enabled building sites following this? Well, the plan change proposal, what would the total number be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unchanged in terms of residential building sites.
Aren't
The
you
number
arguing, aren't they arguing that it's more? No, I'm saying what's the zone enabled, but it's because each of those activity areas can have multiple houses, or some of them can have multiple houses, particularly like at the A4, A6, A5, A6. So I'm asking, what's the total number of houses that will be enabled in this zone with the additional, what is it, 14 that's proposed by this plan change?
So, sorry, through the chair, there might be misunderstanding here, but there are no additional residential areas proposed in this. They're changing where the residential areas is occurring.
I quote from paragraph 1, by amending the location, establishing 11 additional home sites.
Through the
11
chair,
additional home sites.
those residential units are taken from existing activity areas within the zone. So the total number of residential units, as far as I'm aware, throughout the whole zone doesn't change, just their location within the zone, and moving some of those sites that were within activity areas where you could have multiple dwelling units
Okay.
to
Yeah,
singular home sites.
So you're saying that there aren't 11 additional, and I see that in paragraph 2, it does say that there's no change in the number, but yeah, okay. All right, I had read it to that this was additional development. I apologize if that was incorrect.
Yeah, apologies for that clarity on our side.
Okay, all right, Melissa?
Thank you for explaining all of that. That answered lots of my questions, but then just raised one more. So this is coming to us to make a decision to adopt or accept. When it goes to a hearing, the decision to accept the hearings panel recommendation, does that come back to this committee or does that come to full council?
Full council.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep, a couple of quick questions, or a couple of clarifications. So the structure plan that you had on the slide before has a key, but I think the more you read it, the more you come to understand about the initial reading. I couldn't see what LC and LH and that stood for, but I see now that the L stands for landscape, C stands for the landscape area associated with the clubhouse, H stands for a landscape area associated with the housing side, house side. So I just wanted to confirm that's correct understanding. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And one thing that was of interest to me was there was, where was it? Page 12 for option 2. It under disadvantages, it listed one of them as saying there are no advantages, which is sometimes a little bit different to being disadvantages, but
Noted.
yeah, that's just a point to note. So just to clarify or to confirm really for the record, there is potentially an option with a private plan change to reject it, but for this particular case, there are no grounds to reject it. It says that quite clearly, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I can see definitely what you're saying about the difference between adopting it or accepting it. There's a few differences there. And I guess coming back to the points that Quentin was raising about the benefits that the applicant has stated, if we were to adopt it, we would basically be accepting those, wouldn't we? By accepting it and leaving it with the applicant to assess. Those, as you have said very clearly, that was a really good response, that those would be then tested by that process. So that's quite good as well. The other question I had was, in the same vein that there are, the criteria for rejecting a private plan change, which don't apply in this case. Just going back again to what Quentin was talking about with the fast track application, Are there any grounds, if you've already gone through a plan change request and you've got a similar, slightly different fast track application, are there grounds for that to be rejected? If you've already got a plan change request underway or recently dealt with within the last 2 years?
Through the chair, I can't recall the specifics, but certainly the council and the applicants have to discuss with the EPA any competing applications and planning terms, be that resource consent or plan changes. Obviously, fast track process doesn't want to get wound up with overruling a decision that's just been made through that process, and that's the reason why councils and the applicants need to discuss any competing planning matters that have been decided, which would impede a fast track application.
So there would need to be some cross-referencing between the two different applications. Yes. Yeah. Very good. Now, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? Right, we have the resolution planning strategy to note the contents of the report and accept the private plan change request under clause 352 Bravo of the first schedule of the RMA 1991. We have a mover. Gavin moved it. Second by Matt. Any further discussion or comment? All in favour? Quentin Barry, you in favour?
Yeah, I'm in favour. Thanks, Lyle.
I'm going to oppose it. Please record that.
Okay, so it's carried with one vote of opposition from Quentin. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, team. Well done.
Thank you.
Close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.